That was one thing that blew my mind, was like, oh, the body is the subconscious, like,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and now I'm like, of course. But one of the 5 reasons is subconscious sabotage. So if your body isn't in alignment with that goal, right, or with that wish, making sure you're friends with your body and making sure your body is in alignment with that wish. The easiest way to do that is to make it fun.
Share your story, let it free to be the medicine we both need.
Thank you for tuning into the ReMinders podcast. You just heard the voice of Brownell Landrum, who I just enjoyed a fun chat with for this episode, exploring the art and science of wishing, which is the title of Brownell's newest book, just published this past November. She gives a great overview of this topic on the episode, of which there are many branches to explore, thus having written a full book to deep dive into the ancient practice of casting wishes and how to optimize the practice successfully. One aspect that she highlights as being one of the most interesting that came out of this research was coming across what she calls collective wishing. Now, this made me think of the idea of cultural mythos, unifying stories societies hold that help drive motivation of working together towards collective goals. I've heard some people suggest that we've kind of lost this in modernity, but I don't think that's entirely true. We may not be telling stories of the need and benefit of appealing to nature spirits for good weather or something like that, and may not necessarily have religions that contain all members of a tribe or nation. But there certainly are still cultural narratives that drive society to function in the ways that it does, that perpetuates us serving the aspects of the human spirit that we do, or don't. Honestly, it seems like we're reaching a juncture where many people are starting to question those stories, questioning what we're serving and if it's truly serving our deepest needs and fulfillments. The point here, without having to illustrate this too graphically, is that what we put our collective attentions into have a lot of power, not the least of which is the potential of action. Right, so I think this is one of those things that unfortunately probably could easily be brushed off as woo-woo from a materialist perspective, but it's really a pretty basic, self-evident reality that when we have more hands on a project, it gets done quicker. 2 heads are better than one type of thing. I feel like one of the predominant stories in the Western world is the philosophy of individualism, which is a relatively new privilege to play within that story, as far as I can tell. As most human history, we've been operating as a collective species, and I think we still maintain that herd mentality for better or worse. I'll let Brownell define the collective wish in her terms later in this episode, but I just wanted to mention on this topic that one of the projects that she has set up as a way of engaging in positive momentum is called the Cosmic Wish Experiment. And I'll leave a link in the description for a website that explains it in full detail. But to my understanding, it's a call to forming our own local groups to hold collective intention and have routine check-ins for energizing this vision for any number of brighter futures. So you get to pick what the wish is and gather some of your homies and go through this process. I believe it's an 8-week process here that the website will walk you through, essentially for, again, energizing this collective vision for a brighter future. I think we can all admit that there are so many visions of any number of awful futures floating around in the ether right now. So to engage actively into tuning into sowing seeds of positivity can be so empowering and honestly necessary right now. Anywho, links will be posted. Feel free to tune in and check out all the cool things Brownell is sharing. She's got multiple books released, nonfiction and fiction, The Cosmic Wish Experiment, lots of good stuff, so tune on in. As usual, we're going to kick off with a little grounding meditation here. So in the spirit of the power of collective attention, let's tune on into this mindfulness for a few moments here together. I'm just going to close my eyes, invite you to do the same if that's comfortable. course, if anyone's listening, they're driving, don't have that luxury, but still a nice mindful check-in here. Just bringing some awareness to the body, maybe noticing if we could be a little bit more comfortable, if that means sitting up more straight or maybe laying back a bit further, whatever that is. Just bringing that attention to what's here. Noticing our natural patterns of breathing. Just noticing. Perhaps drawing a bit deeper in an inhale, enjoying that fullness. Enjoying that fullness before exhaling, letting it all go, and noticing that gap of emptiness at the end of the exhale. Just noticing these patterns. Of course, we'll be noticing any thoughts that are coming up too, and just allowing them to be. I've been introduced to a mantra lately is, yes, thank you. And just tell your thoughts, yes, thank you. And just let them dissipate from there. And for a grounding element, I like to visualize an extension of my spine, an energetic extension, descending all the way down from my crown down to the root of my spine and extending further and further into the soil, through the crusts of the earth, the layers of this planet. Extending all the way to the core of the planet. Just feeling this strength and stability of being anchored to this wild ride we're on this planet. It's so much bigger than us as individuals, yet we're all connected through it. And then while we're at it, I like to visualize an extension of energy ascending up the spine and out into the ether, up and out of the crown into the realm of thought, intellect, understanding, imagination, cosmic wishes, and that more ethereal plane. And to just be in the center between those two worlds. All right, coming back to the room. Appreciate you joining me for this conversation. Excited to learn more about you.
Yeah, me too. Me too. In fact, you made me think of something. I'm going to pull it up really quick because I think you'll like it, because it just brought up an idea. Or lyrics to a song I wrote.
Oh, cool.
And I thought you might like it. Okay. Within this world of silence are heroes in the dark. They set off inspiration with just a little spark. These are the hidden helpers, the wind beneath our wings, the force of affirmation that causes hearts to sing. We never know what impact we have while we are here. This world is so much bigger than this tiny little sphere. Trajectories and visions can turn on just a dime. A simple, kindly gesture can ripple through all time. Let's make sure we remember our heroes young and old, the bravery of rebels, whether meek or bold. For every generation has wisdom to impart. So listen, learn, and share your love before they do depart.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I thought this tiny little sphere, you were talking about the sphere in the world and everything. I thought this world is so much bigger than this tiny little sphere, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I didn't know that you songwrite too.
Yeah, okay. That one actually is lyrics to I wrote a musical, a screenplay, and I wrote all the lyrics to all the songs. So that's the lyrics to that.
Gotcha.
And I've written a few songs with my brother, who's a a very successful composer, score, songwriter. And so I've written a bunch with him. And then I've actually written 2 songs, like music and lyrics myself. So I felt pretty proud of that.
Nice. That's super cool.
That was hard. I was like, can I really do that? I'm not a musician. But today's technology can at least let you, like, okay, I can play the chords on a keyboard and then it can play it like it's supposed to sound.
Yeah.
I can pick out the chords.
Yeah. So, no, that's great.
Yeah, and I wrote a song that we wrote a song last year that came out last fall. It's called "Christmas is Forgiveness."
Okay.
And it's kind of a nice double entendre, right? Because it's like we think Christmas is forgiving, Christmas is for grace, Christmas is for packages, all tied up with lace, right? We're thinking it's forgiving, but that it's also about forgiveness.
Yes.
And so it's got that message.
I like that. Yeah. I had a buddy that kind of spun the word to me that one time of like, yeah, what is forgiveness? Well, we're all forgiving. This idea of just giving and like being, anyway, I like the little...
I mean, like when you think Christmas is forgiveness, it's just such a great title.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I couldn't believe that nobody ever did that before, but
that's really cool.
I don't know, you said tangents are good. Do you know that Bob Dylan quote about, has a quote and he says, the song was there before I came along. I just had the pencil and wrote it down.
Yeah. I couldn't have quoted it in those words, but
you know that quote, that's kind of like when you think about it, was this thing already there and I'm just the one it landed on? Like Liz Gilbert talks about these idea orbs that land on people.
That was the first thing that kind of came to mind when you're reading your lyrics, is the idea of the muse. That there's a creativity outside of just our ego vessel that's kind of bringing it through. I almost feel silly even saying like I wrote a song or something like that. I mean, it sounds kind of silly to say that I changed.
No, I know what you mean.
Too, but like it kind of feels
it goes the other way around. People are like, well, like I've done some healing stuff over the years, and here and there, nothing big, but. I said to somebody, like I helped or I healed this person. They're like, no, you didn't. The universe did. And I was like, well, then basically we don't do anything. If we don't take credit for something, I'm like, yes, but I was the conduit. I was the one who allowed that to happen. I opened up that portal. I did that energy. I put that work in. Where is that line between, do I take credit for this idea that I did the work to put it together, or do I not? And you have to have a certain humility, knowing that you were chosen for a reason to deliver that message. But
it's kind of a trapping of language. I feel like that's more of a limitation of the words we use, more so than like really meaning one way or the other. I think we can like hold intellectual space for that. We are all a part of one mysterious moving that is like, I'm not really choosing for my cells to do the work that they're doing, or even for my lungs to be inhaling and exhaling. It's a kind of automatic process. There's the things that I feel like I choose to do, like, but at some point it is kind of happening on its own accord, but we still have to use language to say a certain thing, right? On
a bigger scale, maybe you are choosing it because you are this consciousness that's choosing to be embodied. And so therefore it isn't, you may, that's where you kind of question, where do wishes come from and how do wishes manifest? And I call it, I have this concept I call cosmic collaboration, which is, that there is always an element that is beyond our comprehension of what that is that assists us on some level. Like, the difference between a wish, a prayer, and a goal is something you can do. You can check the list. You can do I'm going to get that. It's like a grocery list. I'm going to do this thing. But a wish always has some element, like a prayer is like, you have no control. You're delivering it to some other power, right? Like, I can't do anything more here. I'm praying for help because I can't do it on my own. And a wish is somewhere in that in between, but there is some element, and that's the thing I think is so much fun about it, and that I've had the most fun with, is the fact that, no matter what your belief system is, like you can be super religious and get that, or you can be super skeptical but sort of have the idea that there's a scientific explanation from that gets into quantum physics or non-locality or all of those really trippy things, right?
Sure.
Is that what's causing it? Is that the assistance that we're getting outside of ourselves? But there's, I love the fact that it can unite. Like you can be spiritual, religious, this religion, that religion, all of those, and people everywhere, all over the world, since the beginning of time, have wished. Like wishing has been an important part of our culture for all of humanity.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. It's probably always been a scenario where there's something that we want, or there's something that we're struggling with and we wish it were easier is probably maybe one of the most primal wishes or something. I wish the food was already here. You know?
Right, that's the paradox, because in fact, one of the things I'm working on a new book that's called The Art and Science of Wishing at Work. And I was looking at the research just literally this morning about how we envision something being so much easier than it's going to be. So we wish for something and we fill in the blanks thinking it's going to be perfect. And we miss a lot of the things that might be more difficult once we get that wish. You know, one of the challenges that we might wish for that Ferrari in our front driveway, but then, oh crap, we have insurance. Oh crap, what if our kid gets it and drives it off, or like a million different things that could happen. That we just think of the fantasy, right, of it.
Yes.
But the thing that I think is the most interesting is the collective wishing, and that's what's been around since humanity, and I think that's something we're losing. Is wishing as a group for the same thing.
Yes. Okay.
Back in, if you go, that's one of the sciences, right? Every time you make a wish, you engage over a dozen sciences, and one of them is it's in our DNA to wish together. We wish for rain. If we're, a culture, well, we still wish for rain in some places, right?
I think so,
We had these rituals and this unity wishing for the same thing, and I just don't know that we do now.
I would like to go deeper into that, because I feel like we do it on a more subtle way, like even the idea of wishing for rain. And maybe this sounds a bit, I don't know, abstract, but I feel like even having a weather app and us all putting our imagination into, oh, it's going to rain today or tomorrow, before we even know what it actually looks like outside. We're projecting a forecast for a week away or a few days or whatever. And I think there's something to be said for that. We're all imagining it being a certain temperature or whatever it is. Maybe that's a subtle level that in some ways we're still encouraged to have collective visions on even what's going on in the world, or what our estimations of the future are going to be like, the stories we tell. I think those are subtle ways of implanting these visions for the future or whatever it may be.
That's definitely the stories we tell, right? I have a really cool chapter on the science of storytelling and how powerful that is and how important it is. And I guess it just depends on, a wish, because a wish is generally something you're expecting something to change. There's something different that's not there, right? And so, and whether that's, we do that on our individual basis, like I wish for this new job, or I wish for this relationship, or I wish for, or like in the book I'm writing now, kind of is more about big organizational kinds of wishes and changes. And how do you turn that, you look at the problems people have this anticipation, this change is going to happen, but huge percent, 70-something% don't work, right? They fail. And it's because they're not wishing in the right way. They're not turning their problems into wishes, and they're not following the right, just by applying some of the science to it. So, there is so many nuances to it, and it's something I think all of us can think about and relate to and have different points of view on. And I think that's one thing that makes it so fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Will you walk me through kind of your process? I imagine you have a bit of a practice around a wish fulfilled. How do you apply the science to get what you want out of a wish to truly manifest in that way?
Yeah. And that is one thing, it's like I said, it's kind of, it's a little different from manifesting, because it's another way to look at it. And it's another, there's a lot of labels around the world of manifesting, right? And there's a lot of, it can even go, I even have a chapter in the book about, how some of those things can be taken too far, and that be well, if you really wanted this blah, 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 you would have it. So therefore you're making a mistake. And it's there's so much more to it than that.
Bringing a level of shame to it almost.
It's like toxic positivity and some of those aspects, there's actually really interesting research that says that some of the people that got into some of those manifestation things, and not all of them. Obviously there's a lot of really beautiful stuff. So I'm just saying, that it has some nuance to it that is hard for people to really grasp. But some of it is actually to the point of like people got so over optimistic that they have much higher foreclosure on mortgages, for example. Because they thought, well, I can make that happen. I'm so confident. I'm going to do my this and this and this, and I'm following these rules. And one of the things that I get into, and of course I'm coming back to your question, but is what I call the 4 responses. And that's one of the frameworks of the book, is that every wish is answered in one of 4 ways. It's either yes, no, wait, or something better.
Okay.
Right? So sometimes you get yes, and sometimes yes isn't always what's best for you. Like sometimes we wish for things, you go, I wish for this, and now I'm like, well, be careful what you wish for. I mean, like that's like people think that and think, wait a minute, was that something that was actually going to make me happy? I wish for that Ferrari. And then the next day your neighbor gets a fancier one. Like, why did you really wish for that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so I get into the wants versus needs, and we can go down that path if you want. And then no isn't always the worst answer. No might just be more information to get you down a better path, or the path that you should be on. Wait, sometimes that means the world isn't ready. So you wish for this thing, but the world just needs to catch up. Or sometimes it's you're not ready, and there are things you need to do to prepare yourself to receive that wish. And then so often we fail to look at what could be something better. Like we wish for something and like, well, maybe there's something a whole lot better that really gets to what we need versus what we want, which is an element of it. So that's one of the fundamentals. Yeah, go ahead.
How are you receiving these answers? The yes is just the wish does come to fruition, or is there a subtle level of your process of figuring out whether it's a no or a wait or something better? How do you kind of decipher the difference between those?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to give you kind of an indirect answer. The direct answer is, I think a lot of times we know, and obviously if we're waiting, we're waiting. We wonder why we're waiting, and therefore we can understand, go, okay, maybe I'm waiting. And while I'm waiting, the science of some of that is really interesting in that how our brain works when we make a wish, especially when we follow a process where we have to repeat the wish, we should repeat the wish. I think one of the mistakes people make a lot is they'll wish and then they let it go and it's poof and it's gone. But there are 2 elements that need to know that you're serious. Your brain needs to know, I really wish for that. Like, this is important. And if you repeat the wish just for a minute every day, then and if you have a ritual, which is going to go back to your original question, like what's the process, right? You need, ideally there's a ritual. There's some sort of prompt or ritual that's going to remind you to do that wish. And then if you do it on a repeated basis, the neuroscience says between, some say 4 weeks, some say 6, some say 8. I just kind of go with 8 based on the data. Then within that process, you're rewiring your brain to look for the answer. It will find the answer. It will look for the solution to that. And so just putting it out there once doesn't train your brain to look for it. It also, if you are kind of tapping into something outside of yourself, whatever, spiritual entity or quantum physics entity or whatever energy that is, saying this is something I really want, to repeat the wish is really powerful to do that. So, but one of the things that also, as far as a technique that I think is important to look at while we're going through that, to answer your question about like, okay, these 4 answers, what are you doing in the meantime, is something I call reverse optimism. And what I mean by that is when you can look back at things that happened or didn't happen in your life and go, oh, that happened to get me there, to get me there, to get me here. If that hadn't happened, even though it was tough at the time, I wouldn't have learned this. I wouldn't have gone here. I wouldn't have made this move. Like, I talk about in one of my books, it's called A Love Story to the Universe, and it's kind of semi-autobiographical. And, I was happy where I was, and all of a sudden, boom, the rent gets increased 50%. not 15, but 50, So it's like, okay, this is that kick in the butt I need to go somewhere. And then that led to this, and this. And I write about what I call traffic angels, like some entities or beings upstairs that are going, okay, you're here, Brownell's here, this person's here, we need to get them together. How am I going to get her out of her little nest? Because how do you get an American woman living in Colorado to meet a British man in Tunisia? Like, that was not, that took some, logistics to happen.
Right.
But when you look back and go, well, if that hadn't happened, and that hadn't happened, and look what I learned, and look how I grew from it. So reverse optimism helps you in that process, because when you start realizing that you have this resilience and you have this ability to see there might be a bigger plan happening, then I think you can weather all of that waiting and all of those nuances a lot better.
No, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I saw the title of one of your books. It seemed like it was on that topic. Five
Reasons Why Bad Things Happen.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my first book. Yeah.
So that's about like reverse optimism, or
it's funny because I didn't have that term then, right? I read that book almost 20 years ago, and so it was a long time ago. But it's like so much of all of the stuff I learned writing that led to where writing this new book. Right? There's so many of the fundamentals of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, this concept of reverse. I mean, there is the concept of something better, potentially. Obviously, that's one of the 5 reasons, spoiler alert, is that there's a silver lining in the reason that it happened.
Yeah.
But the whole concept of orchestrating a reverse optimism is relatively new, really.
Gotcha,
like, what's that process? Like, let's go through this and look at this thing. And let's look at some of our past wishes and see any of those 4 responses, how they might have served us.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, that title in particular did catch my attention, because that's something that I live by myself, and I feel like what you're talking about with the cosmic wish and everything is really about like getting into creator mode, versus I think maybe the default mode for most people is like more of a victim mentality. And in victim mentality, it's, oh, woe is me. Like, why did this happen? If we could have optimism in either direction, also gratitude in the current moment as well. I think that just energizes this more of a magic to life as well. But certainly like creating more creativity.
Yeah, in fact, there's a story you might appreciate. I actually, back when I was writing that book, I had the pleasure of meeting Rabbi Harold Kushner, who wrote the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People, if you know that book.
Yeah, I've heard of it, yeah.
And he read my book, and his reaction was that he thinks everything's random. He does not think things happen for a reason. And I was like, how can you? I mean, my first reaction was like, what? How can you think it's random? And then I did some research along exactly the lines you're talking about, and I just kind of fell in love with Albert Bandura's work, and he talks about self-efficacy, and that's what you're talking about. It's like when you realize that you have some self-efficacy, and that people who believe that things happen for a reason are happier than those who don't, because they realize there's some influence that they have on what happened, right? And the big thing that all the 5 reasons have in common is that it's happening to get you to change something. So whatever that bad thing is, it's nudging you down a different road than the one you've been going on.
That makes sense, yeah.
That is important, right? Well, yeah, tell me what you think. I want to hear what you think.
That's kind of bringing to mind this idea of like universal equilibrium, that the universe needs to be in harmony in some way or another. Otherwise, things just wouldn't continue to work, right? So on a macro or micro scale, it does kind of make sense that if we're just out of alignment with where the roles we need to play, for instance, that, we might experience illness or just a total lack of flow where we have bad luck, where things just aren't happening for us. Kind of makes sense. That was just the word that came to mind when you said that, was like equilibrium. The universe
that's nice. I like that. Yeah.
Keep that equilibrium, keep that harmony.
Yeah, and that equilibrium and the harmony is toward where you're supposed to be, where you're, I don't know, where do you stand? This is I like getting deep, and I know you're good at it. Where do you stand on the whole fate versus free will?
My take is that there are an infinite amount of determined, fated timelines, but I do feel that we have free will as to which one we're tuning into in a given moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's it. I like that. I like that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always think that we have free will in two places. That we have free will before we're born, where we're kind of making some decisions about like, okay, I'm picking that body. I'm going to make some, when you choose your body, you choose the family, you choose, the things that go along with the DNA that's in that being that you choose. Like if your soul had chosen my body, that would be very different, and vice versa. Right. So you're choosing that, and you're choosing certain key, and when you're talking about like the what was the term you used about the different dimensions? How did you exactly say?
Timelines?
Different timelines. And so there's different timelines and different dimensions, right? I'm thinking about parallel worlds or timelines, or like, okay, that it's, I almost see that graphically, like this, like, you can make in fact, I actually wrote this, and like somebody was taking those building blocks with the balls that do the lines that we're trying to draw all these lines of all these paths. And it turned into this, I'm using the wrong language, but whatever those things are where maybe a listener can make a comment saying, this is what you're talking about, brother. So that's how I envision when you're saying that. So I think I create kind of that, some of those possible timelines before we're born, like, okay, this person is somebody we really want to try to connect with in that lifetime, or this decision are going to be, or this lesson, or some of these things that we set up in advance. And then we get here, and that sets up what we would call fate, which is the things that we sort of set. But then once we're here, it's like a roadmap, and or this, these different timelines. Where am I going to jump to? Am I going to, I'm going to sit in the same timeline my whole life, or am I going to jump? And am I going to take like the high road or the low road? Right? Yeah. Am I going to go zoom through an intersection, or I'm going to stay in the same place the whole time?
Right.
So that's kind of how I see it. So it's like where we have this ability to make those decisions, and no matter what path we take, we learn. But it ain't so easy sometimes. If we don't make the right decisions, we're going to learn the hard way versus easy way.
Yeah, or just learn over and over, and it takes forever. We could expedite the process of growth and of evolution a bit if we bring more of that conscious presence and present attention into what do we really want to be attending to. It's like we all have these phones. We could be scrolling through an infinite amount of like different window of different realities, or we could choose one and consciously, what do I actually want to learn? Like, do I actually want to like watch one comedian stand up special versus like 16 of them in a row, just little moments, Right. And same with life, we could be in autopilot and just kind of be a squirrel just chasing our next meal or whatever it is, and just like, not really like on one track. And, there's a place for all of it too. There's a reason, like, like you're talking about silver linings with even really unfortunate things that happen. But even just there's a time and place for being in the autopilot and just being, experiencing normal life on Earth, and the ways that it's working for us and the ways that it's not. And then there's something to be said for when we are either graced with, or through our own volition of effort, having those moments of clarity of recognizing that we have power to choose something different, whether that's, creating deeper goals for how we want to be treating our body, or treating the planet, or treating our family, whatever, whether it's a career pivot, whatever. There's a million different avenues of how we know we could apply some force, some effort, some consciousness towards making change, versus just being in the autopilot. I think it's the same thing with just like fate versus, or destiny versus free will in that way. There's moments where we get to choose.
Yeah.
If we don't choose, it's chosen for us. So.
And sometimes it is. Sometimes you get kicked out of your apartment and then go travel the world. Sometimes you make those decisions that and I do think it's kind of like we have guides that are kind of like border collies that sometimes have to keep whacking us in the side to get us back on the path that we're supposed to be on, right? And it's like, oh, wait a minute, if this is going to, if this is where this is the problem I'm having, like, what am I supposed to learn here? And and then all of a sudden, so many things open up when you see it that way. So anyway, that's kind of going into the reasons why. But when Rabbi Kushner was like, it's random, I was like, I love the Bandura work, because he basically says, even if you're wrong, if you think you have control over something, you're happier. With the statistics, even with the science and the studies, is like, you're happier if you feel like you have some opportunity to make those choices.
I don't know. I think it could be either way, because I'm also thinking that in times I feel solace in the idea that I'm not the one in control. I could see like that mentality also lending itself towards like neurosis of, I think a lot of people can struggle with their own like internal control gremlins, the little control freak inside of us that feels responsible for maybe everything on a certain level. So I think it could, I don't know, it could be either way. I kind of feel comfort in like just letting go and surrendering to the happening.
Yeah, well, and that is important, and that's one of the things I actually, talk about in the book is, the thing I love about the idea of a wish, like versus a goal, is like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to force myself, and you were, talking about the body before, and that is one of the key elements of the. You said, what are the formulas to doing a wish. And to making sure, the three selves, right? Whether you call it mind, body, spirit, or conscious, subconscious, superconscious, or I call it inner self, outer self, higher self, whichever vernacular, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, I like that.
And that was one thing that blew my mind, was like, oh, the body is the subconscious, like,
Yep.
And now I'm like, of course. But then when I first had that concept, it's like that changed everything, because I realized that's, and one of the 5 reasons is subconscious sabotage. So if your body isn't in alignment with that goal, right, or with that wish, right? So I stole from my first book and put that part in this one, which is, making sure you're friends with your body and making sure your body is in alignment with that wish. The easiest way to do that is to make it fun.
Yeah.
Your body wants to have fun. I mean, like, your body craves that energy. I like to look at the body. It's kind of like, imagine somebody's walking their dog and the dog runs off. And what do they usually do?
Yank the chain.
They yank the chain, or they yell at the dog, or they chase the dog, right?
Yeah.
Right? But instead, if they go, come on, it's fun over here, the dog's going to go, yay, we're going over here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Every time, right? So that's what we need to do with our body. We're yelling at our body, or chasing our body, or yanking the chain of our body. And our body's going, hell no, I'm not going there. You want me to go when you're yelling at me? That's
stressful.
I want to go.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't respond to
stress. But if you make it fun, the body's like, sure.
Yeah, it makes sense, because the fun is flow. Right, and that's what the universe does is flow and then contract. If we're creating a stressful situation around, I need to be this certain way, blah, 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 blah. Of course, that's not going to be in flow.
Right.
White knuckle the experience like that. Yeah.
That's right. Right. If you're trying I like the quote from Star Wars is like, the tighter you try to hold on to, the more star systems will slip through your fingers, or something, like she says. The tighter your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers, I think is the term. It's like, golly, you could sit with that one for days. Like, that's absolutely really an important, and in fact, I don't know if you're familiar with the David Hawkins research, power versus force. Are you familiar with his?
A bit, not.
Well, it's basically like saying our energy can go from very low energy to very high energy, low frequency, or whatever words you want to use, but that the lower level energies are the force energy, and the higher level energies are the power energy. And we're spending a lot of time, especially these days, in that anger, despair place. And that is we're keeping ourselves down in this energy, and that's easier to control us when we're there.
True.
But if we can rise to a much higher level, and we can get to these love or gratitude, like you said, and these higher level frequencies, then we have more power. then we can unite towards something more beautiful and something more positive that we're all working toward.
Yeah. Such an important pivot. Yeah. So true.
Yeah. It really, it's important. It's a cool thing to look at.
You just mentioned the alignment. So the subconscious being the body. You said your language is inner body, outer body,
inner self, outer self, and higher self.
And then higher self.
There are different people use different languages. I wanted to use something a little different than most people had used, so that. But there are obviously some experts that Gary Zukav uses the language I do. There's different. Like if you're into the Huna religion, they use Amaku and Ulipili and Uhani. They use different languages for it, but. Basically, it's the way to look at it is assuming you had a soul before you were born, that a part of you that existed before you were born, and that will exist after you die. Like there's a consistent something part of you.
Is that the inner self or the higher self?
And that's your higher self. That's your soul, right? And I'm going to kind of qualify this by saying this is where it's in my belief system. This is not necessarily. There is definitely a lot of psychology talking about subconscious, conscious, and superconscious, right? And there's a lot of research related to that. When I'm getting to the soul and the transcendent part of the thing, I'm starting to venture into what does Brownell think versus what does the science say. So
sure.
I want to be clear, like
too, yeah.
I just want to be clear because I like, I'm not a scientist. And I'm more of a storyteller, right? But I researched a lot of science for this book. I quote 70 different scientists. So, it's like science heavy. So I like to be clear when I'm saying this. So anyway, the way I look at it is we have the soul. The soul chooses a body to become us. So the higher self or the soul chooses the body, and then the body is the subconscious, and then the combination of that becomes who we are. So that's the conscious self or the outer self.
Okay.
So again, it's the same, subconscious is as inner self, conscious is outer self, and superconscious is higher self. So that's how I
gotcha. Okay, so that makes sense. So essentially your inner self is the one that's going to have the desire for either more flow, more alignment, whatever the wish is. The inner self is going to have the wish, and the body needs to be in alignment with that through it feeling fun, it feeling possible in that way, if I could throw that in there possibly.
Another way to look at it is you need all three selves to be aligned with your wish, right? When you're making a wish, in fact, that's one of the key principles is to make sure all three selves are in alignment. So your body has to be in alignment, which is, I want to make it fun. I don't want it to be too much stress on me. I don't, I don't want to take away the pleasures that I have in life. When you're talking about gratitude, sometimes we wish for something and then all of a sudden we realize we lose the things that we now appreciate because we're picking this new job that will work so hard and then our body might be tired. So it's important that our body is in alignment. Our conscious self is generally the one making the wish, but then it's the higher self. Like, is this part of my purpose? Is this doing good for others? Is this does this have a bigger purpose? Getting that Ferrari, who is that going to help? Right. Other than the Ferrari dealership, maybe not. Right.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was going to ask for clarity of how you would qualify alignment with the higher self. That makes sense. Purpose-driven, service to others as well as not just service to ego. In other words.
Right.
Does that sound right? Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's where one of the principles in the wish, when you're talking about how to make a wish, one is the anthropology of choosing a ritual, knowing what your ritual is, having something that's going to remind yourself, because that's part of our DNA, like the rituals. The things that we've done, and it's so much fun to do the research of like all the cultures around the world have different wishing rituals. So it's very, very cool to look at that.
That is cool. Yeah.
It's like this is something we all have in common that we aren't even realizing that's like so in alignment. And when you're talking about release, I forgot to mention this, is the one thing I love about the wishing is like the word wish is a release, like wish. Like it itself invites the letting go. You set up, you have the vision, and then you release. Wish. Like more than goal is like this, hard word. Yeah. And even prayer is kind of like this hard word, but wish is just a beautiful,
I like that. I never
meditative
thought
word.
about
Isn't
that.
that
Yeah.
isn't it a beautiful
Yeah.
word? Like while you're meditating, like wish.
Yeah. Well, it's such an interesting take on these ideas because the word wish, I don't have that much of a relationship with personally, you know. And when you're saying this, I'm thinking of one of the main avenues of that is like a birthday wish. And so the idea of like exhaling into the candles, your wish, that sort of.
And the elements, there's a lot of anthropological history about using the 4 elements within a wish, whether it's, obviously, air and breathing out, or earth and burying something that you wish that will, manifest, all the different things. So burning, the candles on the cake. I mean, there's a lot of elemental stuff back in the history that's pretty interesting related to the wishing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah.
But it does tie in. So so I also talk about, so the anthropology is the ritual, something to remember, something that's, and again, I think this is some of the questionable research, but there is some research on like, that's probably in our DNA. Like it is who we are as physical beings. Like that's the inner self that we inherited when we went to this earth, is this DNA history of wishing and rituals and all of this. And then the other is I talk about what I call the 3 Ps, and that, and this is totally something that a vernacular that I came up with that's backed up by really fun science, which is that your wish should be peaceful, positive, and purposeful.
Peaceful.
And that's the wish that comes in 2 places. It comes in the wish you're making, as well as the way you make your wish.
Okay.
Like, are you in a peaceful
to hurt
place?
Someone.
Right, not hurting someone, right? It's not, and the positive is not wishing against, you're wishing for.
Yes. Okay.
And the science of wishing for is much more powerful in how our brains work, right? So I wish, and I've got a really cute children's book I've got over here, but it's called Cosmic Wishes, and it's got the 3 Ps as an example. The first book is about the 3 Ps, and it shows some examples of like before, and then you add the science of wishing, because that's my big premise is you can take a wish. We all know what those are, but when you start adding the science, you turn it into what I call a cosmic wish, right?
Gotcha.
And that it makes your wish that much more powerful and brings more into your control. And so it's the peaceful is the first one. So the scenario in the book is a girl that's taking a test, and she's like, I wish I wouldn't fail this test, right? But then she says, and then she turns to add the peaceful, the polyvagal system starts to relax, and then she makes the wish, I wish to be calm and peaceful as I take this test, right?
There we go.
And so then all of a sudden that opens up the parts of your brain that make you more creative, that make you take the test better, right?
Yeah.
And then the positive one is, not wishing against, but wishing for. And also having a positive frame of mind, like you can see yourself, you can believe this, you're kind of jiving with it. And the example in the children's book is the first picture is of a preteen girl, and she's got all these books and her computer in front of her, and her little sister's trying to get her attention, and she's like, I wish my little sister would leave me alone. I'm too busy, right? And then they add the sciences to that, and she changes her wish to a positive wish, and she says, I wish I had more time for my sister. Right?
That's
and then her brain is going to find solutions to finding more time for her sister. Right?
Yeah,
Isn't
I love that. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And then the third one is purposeful. And, that's obviously what you're wishing for and how you're wishing, like you do see other people benefiting. So it's not just for yourself. And the example I have in the children's book is a little boy, and he's standing in front of a mirror, and he's got a towel around his neck, and he's like, I wish to be a superhero, right? Because he sees this reflection in the mirror. And then they add the sciences to that, and he said, and mirror neurons and all these really cool things. And he says, I wish to be a superhero so I can help people. And the reflection in the mirror, all the people, not only all the people he's going to help, but all the people who are going to help him. because you start multiplying your ability to find support the more you want to help other people.
Yeah.
And so that makes your wish more powerful, not just for you, but or not just for other people, but for you.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's really, that was, so yeah, I came up with the kind of that framework, but then the science was really cool backing it up.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense just in the taking it back to, maybe I said this in the meditation, just the idea that we are little individual components of something much bigger than us,
Right.
Whether we call it soul or the collective unconsciousness or whatever it is, like there is something that like the human spirit, the organism that we're individual cells of, like is going to nurture and support endeavors that are going to be purposeful in the terms that you're using.
Yeah.
Just service to others, that's going to be supported in some higher way in the network.
Right. And on a scientific way, because you tell a story, people engage in your story, then you're engaging the mirror neurons, so they're buying into it. They see themselves in that story. That multiplies. I mean, there's some actual multiplier effect of that you tell this many people, it brings, and help this many people, and multiplies by this much, and it starts going bigger and bigger and bigger. The more you share those stories, the more you are doing something for others. So it's not just really cool stuff to talk about. There's like really cool research behind it.
Absolutely, yeah, and really cool outcomes and things that can come to fruition through practicing these things. And like you said earlier, the idea of the collective wish, I think that goes right into that. That the power behind these things are going to get, I feel amplified if multiple people are holding a vision together. Not just in our actions, but, or not just in our imaginations, although that is key and helpful too, but then it will also materialize through the ways that we act and through the ways that we treat each other as well. If we're all holding this together, we feel bonded in that way.
That's right. Can you imagine the power of that, right? And I tell a story in the book, and I talk about like a moment during the Black Plague, and people are, corpses are literally rotting in the street. Every other person is dying or has died. I mean, there's no more hope. There's total devastation, total despair, and people give up wishing. I mean, quit wishing. I mean, can you imagine a world where everyone stops wishing? Like there's no more wishing. And then, and in the story I talk about like, okay, there's, a wish fairy, I call it, that comes up with this idea of like, blow out the dandelion, the puffs on the dandelion. And make a wish. And as you're doing it, your souls of your loved ones are going to heaven. And so this story is this wish fairy plants this idea in the minds of everybody there. And all of a sudden they brought back their faith in wishing and gave them a ritual. And that's, I don't know when, total transparency, I don't know when that ritual came to be. Nobody knows from what I can tell, but I figure I can make up a story as much as anybody of when and how and why. But it still illustrates like if you look at the lack of it, like if we lose that power, and I don't think we're activating enough now. In fact, that's why I started something called the Cosmic Wish Experiment. I don't know if you've seen anything about that. Where I'm encouraging people to start wish circles and wish for the same things together. And I've got somebody wanting to do one to make a world a better place for animals. And that every time you see an animal, you're going to make a wish. Like it could be on TV or, in real life or hear a bird sing or whatever, that you're wishing for that. And someone else is doing something and their ritual is going to be every time you see a mirror, you make your wish.
Okay. And
can you imagine when you get 10, 20, 100, 1,000, what's the number? All people wishing for the same wish every day for a certain period of time. I can't give you the science and the math on how it's going to make an impact. I can tell you the science in terms of how it says that it can and would. Right.
No, I don't even think it really needs the math and the science to show how intuitively that just makes sense, right? Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense if we're continually tuning some aspect of our inner self into that vision, that imagination, that frequency, that reality, however you want to spin it, you know.
Yeah.
It just makes a lot of sense. You know, if every time I look in the mirror, I say something affirming to myself, that's a lot of affirmations that are going to happen from here on out, right?
That's right. Even if all they're doing is getting into a peaceful, positive, and purposeful place for that 1 minute a day, that can change your brain. That's neuroplasticity, right? And can you imagine this like collective consciousness of neuroplasticity in that? Look back. I know you're younger than I am, but make love, not war. Like that. It wasn't just anti-war. It was also pro-love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's this need to be looking for this positive thing and grasp on this and have something to envision. So I don't know what's going to happen with it, but that's what I'd like to see is, like you said, the collective wishing, bring it back and give us something really beautiful that we know we're all doing.
Yeah, totally. Well, I love that you're putting this out into the world, helping put it into the world as well, and spreading this message. Like, I think it's really powerful. And just to highlight again, like the more people tune into it, just being multiplied exponentially at some point, right?
Yeah.
That's really inspiring. I love that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, there's something naturally, inherently fun about a wish too.
Yeah.
It's not so heavy as some other things. So,
have you come across any like? I don't know. I could see. Because like I said, just the word itself, wish, it's not a word that has come into my adult framework. I feel like it's usually reserved towards like a childish thing. I'm sure you've come across this a little bit, right? Like
I bet you say that word more than you think.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say is I can only think of it as like birthday wishes, well wishes, throw the coin in the thing, or like I wish things were better.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Oh, I wish I'd hear from this person. It's so part of our vernacular. I don't think we realize how often we say the word.
That's probably very true.
We may not be into the ritual of like, oh, I see 11:11. Now I need to make a wish, or I'm looking for a shooting star, or I got an eyelash, or I see a dandelion, or you may not be practicing it like you had when you were a child. I'd like to bring that back. I'd like to encourage to bring that back. But I do think it is. In fact, I did some research recently on like, of all the words in our language, it's right in the middle of one of the more frequent words. So it's not like completely, it's not if, and but, right? It's not the most frequently used words, but it's still kind of there as far as frequently used words. I noticed myself all of a sudden, like, oh, I wish I'd, remember to do this, and like it just has my brain just says that, and I like, oh, I just said wish, and I wasn't even thinking I said it.
No, that's how I mean. It's like I think when it is like the normal vernacular, it seems like it's usually like a defeatist, like I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish it feels more negative leaning. So I really appreciate this reframe, because it is like a word that I have not seen as a particularly strong or useful like anchor for change or for pivoting. Even like, I see repeating numbers on the clock all the time, and license plates and stuff, 1111 Make-A-Wish. Even when I hear people say the Make-A-Wish part, I do like the reminder. I like seeing these little like synchronicities, or what people call God winks or stuff like that. To me, it's just like a little spark of like, okay, cool, like we're good. I don't know. Just a tiny little micro dose of like joy. Yeah.
And like, even if like before you go to bed at night, like get to peaceful, positive, and purposeful, and feel the change. Like, when I can't get to sleep, sometimes I just like get into that, and I don't want to really put the effort into meditation exactly, or breathing exercises. I'm just like, okay, can I just get into the state of peaceful, positive, and purposeful? And, it shifts the energy of our bodies in a really, really cool way. So, So yeah, it's just something that came to me. I was writing this novel about this wishing realm, And then I was listening, and then all of a sudden I'm listening to a lecture on neuroplasticity, and I was like, "Wait a minute, is there science in this wishing stuff?"
Okay, gotcha.
And that's how it all came to me.
Cool.
So,
Cool.
and
I was
feel
going to ask.
yeah, everything I've ever done my whole life has led to this. Like it's like my first book, and then all of the other things I've done and experiences have kind of led me to this place.
Yeah.
So.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was really curious about that. Cool. Yeah.
And to teach children, because children naturally are into wishing, right? I mean, I think it's more common. And if we could kind of help frame their wishing to be peaceful, positive, and purposeful, I mean, then you're talking about future generations that have an instinct that, like, now when they see 1111, they won't think it's silly. They'll actually make that wish, and they'll get into peaceful, positive, and purposeful while they're doing it. Like, you never know that little tiny spark that could change the world. So.
100%. And planting those seeds young too. I'm glad that you prefaced that with that, because that's going to help me. I just want to land the plane of the idea of it kind of being reserved for children. And I think the reason why it kind of gets lost is because as people mature, maybe start to think, oh, wishing is silly, or like, yeah, we'll let the kids have a birthday wish, but like, we're not really taking it too seriously, I think the missing component is just exactly what you said, like really having as you're calling it, the science behind it, peaceful, positive, purposeful, and having those alignments as well between the three aspects of self, mind, body, spirit, inner, outer, higher selves, I think really like, I appreciate the reminder from you of those aspects, because now when I come across those opportunities to wish, I feel like I can believe it more, because it's not going to be so powerful if we don't believe it, right?
Well, and that's because, that's kind of the big message is, when you add the science, it becomes more real, it becomes more tangible, it becomes more in your control, it becomes something that has a lot more power than you realize. Just wishing and then letting it go, may or may not have any impact. You might even forget that you did it. But when you do it within a certain framework, with a certain ritual, a certain reminder, a certain way, and you repeat it, then all of a sudden you've turned it into something much more powerful than just, poof.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing this with me. I'm curious if you would care to share any of your personal rituals around it. I mean, I'm kind of getting the idea that it's like you see something and that's a reminder, or like the birthday cake, whatever. That's like a particular ritual. Are there any that you use frequently?
It's funny because I do have somebody that's talking about doing a wish circle and using the mirror, and I'm thinking, and that's really interesting for me because of our perspective of our self-reflection that can happen there, and that's one that has been interesting to pick up. For me, I have to, and again, this is, I'm not a scientist, and I'm still a person still learning just like everybody else is. I mean, I'm just maybe 2 steps ahead on the road, because I've been researching this. But really getting through the whole perspective of like there's something that I didn't get, and now I have to really go through the process of, okay, but let me look at all the gifts that I got from that, right? And so maybe I was wishing for something that I was not in my highest interest. Let me understand that. So I'd say, if anything, I'm just a lot more conscious of making sure my wishes are in alignment, and that I understand that the something better is possible, and that, kind of while I'm making a wish, and I don't write this in the book or anything, but while I'm making a wish, I was like, and there's some aspect of me going, and help me learn what I need to learn, because I'm making a wish because there's something I want to experience or learn, and maybe I'll learn it another way. But I'm much more attentive to what I'm wishing for, and also much more, give myself a lot more grace when maybe it doesn't happen exactly the way I saw it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Love it. I wanted to ask you too, are you familiar with Neville Goddard's work?
You mentioned that in your message, and not really. Not really. So tell me what the framework, and give me an idea of how you think this fits in.
They do feel related. His whole thing is that what people call God is synonymous with what we call imagination. So his whole thing, and he was a guy that would go around and do talks in like the 50s or something like that. So that's before podcasts, he was the he was
the podcast king before there were podcasts.
So he has a few different imagination techniques, and it is a way of like materializing your wishes into fruition. He coined the phrase of living from the wish fulfilled. So that was his whole thing. So that was particularly why I thought of him.
I need to dig into that more.
I think so, yeah.
Living from what did you say? Living from the wish fulfilled.
From the wish fulfilled. So he takes it kind of from the end of the timeline forward. So you were talking about like reverse optimism. I think that's very related, but not from present looking past, but actually putting ourselves in the point of view of the future. And looking back and being like, whatever it is that I wish for, I'm going to feel like I already have it now. So it is kind of very much in alignment with like, the other manifestation techniques and The Secret and things like that. But for whatever reason, the way he presents the information like really stuck with me. And there's a few techniques that I've used. The most simple one is just, I like to use a really silly example of imagine that I have a desire to have a banana and eat a banana. So the technique, just to paint this picture, would be I would imagine and I would feel the emotion. To me, the imagination is almost like imagination spelled with an E. Like it's a very emotionally driven process. Because I'm less of a visual person personally. So charging it with gratitude, charging it with emotion is the key for me. So if my desire is to eat a banana, because we know how rare and special of an occasion that is, whatever. Then I would imagine throwing away a banana peel or something. Whatever scene you can put yourself into, as if the thing that you want did come to fruition. Just imagining being on the other side of the wish. So kind of a different approach, but pretty similar ideas, and just tuning into that we deserve to have the things that we want too. I feel like that is a part of that like peacefulness component to your puzzle there. He's got a lot of great talks, and I do recommend at least taking somewhat of a dive on his work. It's been
I do talk about that in the book, and that the seeing it as if it's completed, seeing yourself in that situation. If you're wishing for rain, then buy the galoshes. Kind of thing. There is also some interesting research on how not to do that too far. If you know Andrew Huberman, I don't know if you watch his show or listen to any of his stuff. I'm just totally a big Huberman.
I know
fan.
the name. I've seen clips and stuff, but
he's a neuroscientist and at Stanford, and he has just a really great podcast. But he does talk about like if you've seen it so clearly, then your brain thinks it already happened and it's not working toward it. So there is what I liked about at least the way I interpreted what you were saying is seeing it, seeing the wish fulfilled, and then seeing the steps getting there. As I'm totally filling in the blanks of what you said, but or interpreting my version of what you said. That's really beautiful, because then there are steps, and then you can see yourself making those steps, and then that's when you also release the wish, right? And then and so because you don't want to conflict with your body and your inner self of already have that money, so I can go ahead and buy that house, and you really start creating some havoc within your body.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So, and you also want your body to go like, I'm jamming with that. I can see it. I can feel that happening. I feel all those things happening. So there's a very interesting, kind of dynamic happening there. That I think is important to kind of understand, and I'll admit it's a lot over my head too. Like I'm not a scientist, but it made sense to me that there have been times in my life where I so saw it and I thought, I probably didn't even need to accomplish it because I already visualized it so clearly. So when Huberman was talking about the how your brain works in that situation, I was like, oh yeah, I know it. That's. So it's one thing like, okay, I see this. Now I need to prepare. I need to know what I have to do in order to get there. And I can, and then you want to like, do I feel good in that place? Does it feel right?
Yeah. That's key. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, those are good points. With the Neville Goddard techniques, it's not so much about the steps. It's more so just planting the seed of intention of whatever the desired wish is, feeling and imagining being in the future place where that's already happened, but then really just trusting the universe to kind of line up the steps. And of course, trusting yourself to take those steps once the opportunities come, but not to get too hung up on exactly what actions am I supposed to take. That's not really a part of the visualization technique from his take. The other component that does differ from your approach is that, again, it's more so like this metaphor of just planting a seed. You're not going to dig it up and check on the progress. It's not a continual thing. It's kind of like a set it and forget it, that kind of releasing of the wish there. Not as much of like a recurring affirmation where I would like tune back into like really making the wish every time I see 1111 or a mirror or whatever whatever you want to call it.
And I do think we need to repeat the wish, but that's not the same as repeating the "I've already got it" kind of part of the wish.
Yeah. Gotcha. I like that.
I mean, it's just cool. I wish for this, and takes less than a minute.
Yeah.
And the biggest part of the less than a minute is the getting into the peaceful, positive, and purposeful place.
Right. Which is just useful no matter how you spin it, right?
Exactly.
And I feel like science too, like to me everything is a lot more contextual than I think we want to feel at given points. And from a scientific framework, I think we want things to be a little bit more solid than I feel like they are at times. Weird preface to say that it's really just about finding out what works for you. Like that's the true scientific method is try it out. Like experiment, and I experimented with
are going to keep looking for more answers, right? I mean, you can tell a good scientist from a not good scientist is like who's still searching, and who's still looking for, who's an explorer and who's not. Yeah, I agree. And that's it. And at the end of the day, it's what works for you and what makes you feel good.
And the more we learn, the more we can ascertain in a certain framework scientifically, then the picture gets bigger. We discovered something about gravity on Earth and something about what I weigh on Earth, and then the picture gets bigger. We find ourselves on the moon. Suddenly weights distribute differently, gravity works differently, you know what I mean? So the picture is always getting bigger, the context is always shifting. But again, all that just to say, like, try it out. For me, I tried out the Neville Goddard stuff, and it just like actually worked for me. I would like to get more deep into that, and I'm going to try out the wish, the cosmic wish here too. And so it's just, try things out, like see what sticks.
See how you feel.
Exactly.
Just don't yell at that dog,
That's key. Yeah. Keep it fun.
That's the key. Don't yell at the dog, make it fun for the dog.
Fun and flowing. Yeah. Usually I end episodes with asking if there's anything that we want to highlight. So I will throw that as a prompt, but since we were kind of really centered around a particular topic, maybe a more fun prompt would be if there's a collective wish that you and I can start together, and whoever's tuning into this, we could have a bit of a collective wish.
Yeah. I mean, I'll answer that in a couple of ways. Okay. One is that we can just throw it out for fun now, and then we can also possibly consider you starting a wish circle, going to cosmicwishexperiment.com, starting a wish circle, and having people join, and actually launching your wish circle.
Yeah.
It's completely free. It's fun. It's got like activities that are super fun. I mean, it's almost designed to be so fun. It's like kids would like it, know. So it's going to make that kid inside of us. And I really it was to me to make it simple, fun, and free. That was the most important aspect because I can't change the world if you're trying to charge money. People want to buy my book, great. That's separate, but they get this little playbook that you can go through in these fun activities.
Okay.
So cool. I'll just leave that up to you. Decide if you want to start a wish circle. But for now, let's see. What would you like? What do you think is what we need now?
Well, you know what? Just in you saying that last piece, the thing that came to mind is something about the inner child. To just let the inner child be free. I think
Okay.
that there's really a need for that. I think we kind of cage up our freedom in a lot of ways, and just this whole thing is kind of like making me feel a bit encouraged to integrate like these high ideas, the ethereal, mature perspective on life with the way that we used to just engage with the world when we were children, where it was just a different spirit and more playfulness. So I think something about like, freeing the inner child could be a nice wish.
Okay, so I wish that my inner child would feel free to have fun and enjoy wishing more.
Yeah. That's great. Cool. What do you think could be the, do you have a name for that? I want to say like a trigger. I'm calling it a reminder.
Ritual, yeah.
Yeah, the ritual for like whatever the piece is that you see something and then you.
Yeah. I want you to choose that.
Okay. Well, I hear a bird outside. Maybe seeing a bird.
Seeing a bird, hearing a bird. Every time we see or hear a bird, then that's gonna be a reminder that our inner self we're engaging our inner self to have more fun and be heard and make wishes.
Love it. Sweet. Thank you for that.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
I love it. And I love
Is
birds.
there anything else you wanted to highlight from the conversation, or?
I just that I enjoyed it, and we covered a lot of really cool ground. So I hope your listeners enjoy it, and if they're interested, they can check out all my stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brownell. I appreciate you joining me and sharing this with me. Yeah, I think it can be potentially life changing. So yeah, you're doing the good work. I appreciate
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
We see what is here is truly enough. The abundant flow is our own. Even when day befalls, we can remain present to it.